Oh, hi. Welcome to WaveTalks Fitness for Humans. It's our three-way fitness podcast, and we are here with a wonderful, fabulously dressed guest here, Marcus. And he's a guy who likes goals. And when he sets his mind to something, he gets it done. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. Welcome, Marcus.
Yeah, it's really cool to be here. It's nice to be on the guest side for once. It's very interesting. So very exciting.
Is that the first plug of this podcast? Is where you're talking?
Oh,
about
so much shameless promotion
your
throughout. Oh, so much.
That's fine. You have a lot of interesting guests, so I don't blame you.
The podcaster becomes the podcasty.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yes.
We're here for it.
There you go.
So what we're actually here to talk about today is something that Marcus is aiming to accomplish in the next year approximately, right? It's kind of
less than 6 months.
Less than 6 months.
Wow.
So he's attempting to beat the pull-up world record. And you've had one attempt, which you did very well in, and you're going to be attempting again in
Looks
April?
like June.
June.
No specific date yet, but it will be in June.
So if you do want to tune into his record attempt, we will be posting where you can actually do that, either in person or virtually, I think, as well. So our first question is, were you always an athletic person? Is this something that's more recent to your life? What did you do sport-wise, activity-wise as a kid?
Yeah, so I'll say, so it's the chin-up record. So there's I think kind of David Goggins put the pull-up record on the map. And actually the current pull-up, 24-hour pull-up record holder, he just broke the 24-hour muscle-up record 2 days ago.
Oh, gross.
He's a cool guy, Army Ranger, or I think he's retired now. But really interesting guy. Yeah, so we're looking for the 24-hour chin-up record. And yeah, so I guess the short answer is this type of athletic endeavor is very new to me. I've always been athletic. I like to say I've had a fair bit of natural ability. I get that question a fair bit too, is it innate or is it learned with anything, whether it's the mental side or the physical side? And the short of it is that it's pretty much entirely learned. The only thing that natural ability gives you is just your starting point. So you might just be a little bit further ahead of other people just because you're gifted genetically. And that's really all it is, just a lottery. But for me, I've always been stupid competitive, really freaky level competitive, even when I was a young kid. So I played soccer for the most part from 4 to 18 or 19, whenever you start playing soccer. And I got into hockey a bit later. I was about 12. And then through the chin-up record, started getting more into MMA, which I love. UFC. Oh my God. Love it. So started training into that, and DDP yoga as well was a big one. I'm actually becoming an instructor. So by the time this comes out, I think I should be certified by then, or I'll be very close. So the yoga background, which I guess is about 5 years now, that's been instrumental, not just for the physical, but for the mental and the breathing. And then that kind of ties into the Wim Hof breathing and stuff that I do. So yes, the tangents are going to be coming in deep today, I think too. I'm thinking oh man, I'm going to have to rein back here. But so yeah, just to kind of conclude that question. I started training for this thing going into my third year of law school, which would have been 2019, 2020. I'm the COVID year. So my graduating year was the COVID year. So I'm pretty sure that was 2020 when I graduated.
I know it's hard to remember now, right?
It's it just blends together. It's so strange. Yeah.
Time's irrelevant at this point. So.
Yeah, I agree. So so I started the training for that. And I don't know. You learn a lot about your body and your mind by doing stuff like that. Especially when I started training for it, I couldn't really do any chin-ups.
How many were you able to do?
In one session, if I could do 30, that was damn.
But that was broken into like how many reps approximately?
4,
Yeah,
5.
okay.
Yeah, for a handful of sets kind of thing.
And just to
Yeah.
give comparison, how many did you accomplish in your first attempt?
Pretty sure it was 37, 31.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a little bit more than
Wait,
15
37 or 31 reps. Come on, man.
3,731 in 15 hours.
So from 30
Good
to
guy.
3,700. That's
It's a little bit more.
that's some progress right
Yeah.
there.
Some pretty serious progress. So you've dabbled a little bit in everything, sounds like, your whole life. What made you want to do this insane thing? Well, insane to us.
I think
Cool
the
to you.
question is actually written, why the fuck did you want to do this?
That was the original question we'd written down.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's a number of reasons to that. I mean, you got some in my notes. I broke it up into like there's some high level reasons and then there's some like low level reasons. I'd say the some of the high level reasons were I was sort of at that point. So okay, you're going into your third year. I was also living in England. I was getting my law degree in England. So I born and raised in Burnaby, Vancouver area here. Shipped over to jolly old England. Where funny, I went to the University of Surrey in Guildford, England. Yeah, really, really nice area too.
It
Ain't
is nice.
nothing
Yeah.
like Surrey here, let me tell you. It is just gorgeous over there. Yeah, so you're kind of thinking about your future, and you're obviously like wasn't really looking forward to third year because I also realized everybody that I had met, who knows when you're going to see these people again. Even my Canadian buddies are all in Ontario, so I really was the only one. So you're kind of reflecting on things and you're thinking about your life past and going into the future. And one of the things that I thought like high level reasoning was that from doing some studying and learning from guys like Jocko and Jordan Peterson and Michael Jordan, Tom Brady, GSP, there's so many people that you kind of start looking to, especially you kind of look up to sort of like the male side too. I mean, there's so many like women competitors and stuff too, and like Lady Gaga's like my idol and stuff like that. She's unbelievable. Not an athlete, but just like her competitiveness and her drive.
She's pretty athletic.
Oh
She
yeah,
is
I
pretty
mean, but
athletic.
Pretty athletic.
she's like, yeah, I'm gonna go be an actress and win Oscars and Golden Globes. Like, okay, right. So but it's interesting, like kind of who you gravitate towards and when you gravitate towards them. And so what I started to recognize with all these like really elite achievers is that there's a lot of similarities, like there's patterns in the way they think and the way they execute, and obviously what they manifest that as changes from person to person because every person has their own personality. They grew up in a particular area, like we're so influenced by our environment, but there's also a lot that connects us in ways that it's pretty shocking actually when you think about it. And one of the things that I recognized in them was just this unbelievable ability to focus and to be present, which was not something I was good at. I was actually horrible at it. So I recognized that in me, I had some work to do, like serious work. Because I really, okay, so you're in law school and like you did well, or, I did well and was doing well, but not as well as I could have, not my potential. I was nowhere near my potential. And that bothered me. And that trickles into other areas of your life too, right? Maybe the way that you are in your relationships is not as great as it could be. Maybe you're a little more insecure in yourself. And so you kind of drop the ball when you know that you could actually do something better. And so I guess I was like searching for something. I was searching for something because I was going to lose the stability of university, and that was it. And so this safety net kind of goes away, and so you need something to kind of latch on to. Mm-hmm. And, circumstance works out, and one of the things that I thought was, do something so impossible that it scares the living shit out of you. And my strength was athletics, and it also is what made me stand out amongst my peers. You walk into I don't know what a law school looks like in Canada, but I'm sure if I walked into a UBC law school lecture, I'm not sure you're going to find many athletes in there. Certainly in the UK, there were no athletes to be found. There was one other guy actually who was a beast. He was a bit of a gym rat. He was a cool guy. But other than that, you got a class of 250.
Well, it's also hard to kind of be athletic when you're spending 14, 15, 16 hours a day at school too.
Well,
that might change.
Not really, but it's all on who you are and what you're able to generate, the kind of energy you're able to generate. And so I figured, well, one of my strengths is this kind of natural athletic ability, and I can focus. And so I'm like, okay, so what you're going to do is you're going to utilize your strength to bring up your weaknesses, and you're going to attack your weaknesses, and you're going to attack them head on, and which is terrifying. And the whole ordeal was hell from start to finish, because that's the way it should be. If you're doing something that isn't causing you to have sleepless nights and isn't causing you to wonder, like, what the hell am I doing? And you should be terrified.
So if you're not terrified, you should be terrified.
You have to be terrified. You should be. Fear's awesome. The only time that fear becomes a negative is when fear overcomes your desire to achieve. That's when fear cripples you. But other than that, I like it. It makes me feel a bit dangerous, and kind of that edge. It gives you a bit of that edge, and kind of makes you feel alive in a way. And that's how
talking about pressure, right? Like having some pressure on you helps you perform.
And there's no amount of external pressure that can match the internal pressure that you put on yourself if you're doing it right. And that's learned. I that took me a while to learn that, but I think I since have. So I was looking for something to push me so far out of my comfort zone that it scared the shit out of me, and that was what I came up with.
That's awesome. One of the things that you said earlier, you were talking about potential and not living up to your potential. How do you know what that potential is to live up to or not live up to? Like, how does one gauge their potential? Because what if you've shot past your potential? Like, what if you were supposed to actually grow up and your final form was going to be potato, and you've just like shot past that? Or, like, what if you are supposed to be well past where you are right now? Like, what if how do you gauge that?
For myself, I think it was more the fact I couldn't particularly identify the potential, but I knew that, like, your instinct, like, when you're doing something wrong, like you really do know. And if you're really, and having to learn to listen to my instinct, that's the first step. And then the second part is you have to trust it. You really have to trust it. And your instinct knows things before you do.
Right.
And now I'm at that point where I don't argue anymore. Like, before I used to, because it's scary, because your instinct tells you to do some awesome shit. And you just it's scary because you're going into the unknown. The unknown is scary for a reason. That's where you put all your fears and your doubts and the monsters that are inside you. They live in the unknown. That's why they're there. But in order to see what's there, you got to voluntarily go there, and you got to be willing to slay the dragon and where the Baba Yaga lives, and you get into mythology and you start seeing like all these different notions on how that's conceptualized from like different cultures, but what you're understanding is that actually what they're talking about is the potential inside you, and then culturally too, there's that collective consciousness. And the potential that lives there too. But specific to your question, I just knew that I'm like, there's more. Like, it's hard. It's a bit difficult to explain, but
it's more of a feeling than an actual thought process.
It's
right?
not a thought process.
Yeah.
It's not. And the more that you think about it, the more you're going to think yourself out of it. Okay. That's the point. And so I just kind of realized, I'm like, this is not right. Like, something just isn't right. Something's just off here. And the more that I got into it, and like once I because you got to remember too, like, you're also going into third year, so your focus is on, university. But you also, you're starting to train, and my whole training for that first year really was purely mental. I barely did any chin-ups that year. Because there's no point in me training my body if my mind is not going to be able to handle it. And I knew that where I'm going, the amount of mental strain is going to be so massive and so unlike anything that I've ever done before. You have to build the foundation.
Right.
And so at least I'm happy that I recognized that I was honest with my weaknesses, and my weakness was mental, and I needed to build up that perseverance and that fortitude. And so my response was to learn as a student. I've always been a really good student, and I pick things up quick. And the focus is always there, and I'm passionate about it. I love to, like the other day I picked up a law textbook for fun. Like I was just like thinking about a couple cases, and I'm like, oh man, like that was such an interesting, and I just like picked it up for but that's just kind of who I am. Like I'm a huge nerd in that way. And so, yeah, that was a thing. I'm like, in order to reach your potential, first of all, you're going to have to do things that you've never done before. To get something what is it, that expression? To get something you've never had, you have to be willing to do something you've never done. Something like that.
If you just invented that, it's pretty sage.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah,
so, all right, we'll put a copyright on that. So there you go. Yeah, and that was really the starting point, and that's when things started to get pretty exciting. Yeah.
You mentioned that there's a couple higher order reasons why you decided to do this, and you've mentioned one, and you said there were some lower level ones too. What were some of the other reasons that you decided to take this on, higher or lower level?
Yeah, so I mean, probably the lower ones are probably, and I mean, I say higher and lower, it's kind of more like, well, you'll see. So I mean, as far as like the lower stuff, I also was getting ready to start my podcast at the time, and that was really important to me because that scared the shit out of me. Being recorded and just the idea of being on camera scared the hell out of me. And so I'm like, cool, so you're going to do that now. Like, that's just what you're going to do. Especially as a lawyer too. It's very different. Like, I'm much more comfortable in the tutorial rooms, and I competed in like some national competitions where you're making arguments and stuff. I was actually fairly comfortable with that, but not as comfortable as I needed to be. And the idea of being recorded, and my whole concept is guest driven. So you're going to be talking to people, pretty much all of them are going to be older than you. They're all going to be these incredibly accomplished individuals. That scares me too, because like, who the hell am I? Like, I'm talking to these people, and you have to be a host, and you have to make it entertaining and engaging. And so that scared the shit out of me too. And so it was like, okay, so put yourself out there. And kind of how that sort of ties into it was, yeah, just do things that scare you, and do things that, do things that really scare you.
Well, and jump in before you're ready. Like, before you've got everything prepared.
If you wait till you're ready, you're never going to do it.
You're never going to be ready.
You're never going to do it.
I actually completely understand that, because one of the things that sometimes my friends don't understand is I will see something like, I want to do that. And then I sign myself up instantly for that thing. And they're like, why would you do that? Are you sure you want to do it? I'm like, I don't know, but I'm signed up now, so I guess I'm doing it.
Is it just poor impulse control?
It perhaps is.
I don't believe in that. I'm very impulsive too. Yeah, it's a personality trait.
It is a personality trait. And I know that if I wait to feel ready to try something, it'll just never happen, because other things get in the way. And in that moment, if you really want that one thing and you commit yourself to that one thing, then you can make amazing things happen in your life. And so what you're saying kind of resonates. Like, that makes sense to me, that you were like, I really want to grow as a person. So I'm going to pick the craziest thing, fully commit myself to it, and just try. Like, it doesn't hurt to try, right?
And I would say to that, it wasn't so much that I wanted to, I needed to.
Yeah.
Like, I was at a point where I'm like, man, like, there's going to be some big life changes coming up. And it's like, yeah, sure, I wanted to, kind of, sure. But I recognize, like, I really need to, because if I don't, like, change something now, the trajectory, I'm a bit unsure about that. I'm a bit unsure about the trajectory. It'll be the place that I want to, like, you got one life, and to think, like, to not make the most of it every single day because you're fortunate enough to be here. Man, I don't know. If that doesn't scare you, I don't know what the hell would, right? And to your point too, when you're talking about like jumping into things before you're ready, if you jump into something when you're ready, it is no longer a challenge because you're ready. It's in your comfort zone. If you're ready to do something and you feel it's in your comfort zone. So that's still good. But really, if you want to go, and I mean, my attitude is always, I mean, I think if you look at what I'm wearing, I think you kind of figure it out, but like go big or go home, right?
You know, that's actually a really good point about jumping in before you're ready, because we have, just on a fitness side of things, we have a ton of clients that are too afraid to start like workout programs or going to the gym or something like that because they don't feel ready. The amount of times I've heard somebody say, I want to work out at home before I go to a gym because I don't feel ready, but it's not putting you out of your comfort zone. And that's what this is all about, changing yourself because you're not happy in the current state. And you're like, I want something to be different. There's nothing wrong with you. You just want something to be different, and you have to put yourself out of your comfort zone in order to do that. And that is scary a lot of the time.
Well, I think too, though, there's also an aspect of like, I've been trying to like coin a phrase myself because I'd like to trademark something today too. But it's like functional manifestation in a way, because like the way that like you're talking about it, like we see these opportunities. And the question becomes, and I guess this gets a little maybe like philosophical or something, but the question becomes like, are you seeing that opportunity because you need to see that opportunity at that moment? Like, is that like, you know what I mean? Because like otherwise you walk past things all the time that could be opportunities that you just like don't enter, you know, like the you know, like your peripheral vision at all. So is it this kind of, like I say, like functional manifestation that creates the opportunity that gets you into, you know, all these things, you know, instead, because now I feel that I've insulted Jess by saying it's poor impulse control. So I'm trying to like back build logic around.
Oh, all good.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things I can't remember, there's a psychological phenomenon for that, and I can't remember the name of it, but it's like, you know, I want to buy a Jeep. I'm going to buy a Jeep. Okay. And then all of a sudden you start seeing Jeeps on the road, and the Jeep commercials.
White van syndrome, or like, totally.
And
pink elephant syndrome.
Right.
Yeah,
and
that sounds better than white van syndrome.
Yeah, that's right. And it's not that all of a sudden these Jeeps are appearing. It's that your focus has changed.
What's that called?
But anyway, I don't know. I took psychology for a year and a half before going to law school at SFU here. So we're talking about 5-6 years ago.
Yeah.
The memory's a bit shaky on
That's
that.
okay.
But yeah, there's a specific phenomenon for that. And it's just, yeah, when you're talking about pursuing something, you have to start. And as you start, you're going to realize that unknown unknowns start to become known unknowns. And then hopefully, I mean, and many things, like for me, I was having a conversation right before I got here, and I was talking about there's so many known unknowns that for my entire life are always going to remain that way, because no matter how much you learn, no matter how smart you think you are, you're never going to really get to the crux of a lot of these, you know, ideas. I mean, man, if Plato and like Socrates and those guys couldn't figure it out, you know, you know, like I'm okay saying I don't know anything about anything, right? But you try and you develop and you grow. And I would also say too, you know, the whole idea of like, oh, people change, you change. No one changes. You don't change. You elevate. It's a distinct difference. No one changes.
I wish I would get taller.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You wish I would get taller? That's
No,
kind. That's so nice of you.
I wish I would get taller, like just a little bit.
Yeah.
Just a.
But like you fit in pockets. It's so cheap for travel.
You're tall in my heart,
Thank
Jess.
you. Thanks, Steve.
If you were literally in her heart, you might be too tall.
I might fit in her heart. I'm small.
Sidebar: Bader-Meinhof phenomena.
Oh, okay.
I
I
would never.
was not even coming close
Wouldn't
to
have
that.
gotten that.
Yeah.
Or depending, synchronicities.
Oh, that is synchronous.
Oh,
okay.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. There you go.
Going back to when you were talking about idolizing people, you
Yeah.
know, you start like looking at people, looking for what you find interesting, trying to find patterns. Was David Goggins one of those people because he held the
Yeah.
record? Like how, when you looked at him, you were like, I'm going to attempt to beat this person at this thing. Like how did that come about in your head?
Yeah. So, I mean, what's sort of interesting about me is that I also like repeat knowledge, like in a really weird way. Like, so like David's book, I've read that book 30 something times. I've listened to the audiobook 50 times. Like we're talking hundreds of hours of repetition, and same with like the Last Dance documentary. I've watched that documentary front to back 60 times, 10 hours of so I tend to repeat things over and over and over and over, because every time you go through it, you see something a bit different, and you're learning something, and you're carrying it with you, and that alters your perception, hopefully in a constructive way, because you start to identify things in a different way, and you start to internalize things. Like the amount of like I cannot stress, like, oh, change or growth is like this thing that occurs, and it's like, no, it's a process. It's a process that's driven by you, and it requires repetition, continuous, horrible repetition over and over till it drives you insane. And that's kind of the idea, is that it really does take, I mean, okay, you don't have to go, I mean, I don't know, maybe it's a bit of a personality thing for me, like the crazy amount of what I would consider a pretty crazy amount of repetition. But anyway, getting to Goggins. I mean, yeah, I would say that definitely Goggins was a huge influence. I think what's different though is that the personality, like I really relate to MJ and more so now towards Kobe, because I'm kind of starting to sort of, because Tim Grover trained MJ, who was his first ever professional client, if you can believe that. MJ, Kobe, and Dwayne Wade. And so I'm really interested in those three guys. But what stood out to me about MJ was how similar our personalities were. My personality is really not that similar to David. But yeah, David was a huge influence, especially because it's kind of like that no excuses thing. Like the fact, like David should not be who he is today. There's no way to explain how David is the way he is today other than he decided to make it so. That's a pretty empowering message. And I think he does a really good job at articulating that, because it's like, this dude should have been a statistic. I mean, that's just the way it is when you look at the abuse he went through, and just like his whole life is just like, it's so outrageous, But I never really viewed it as like, I want to be better than him, or I
you're
never,
not going to write a book that is like a response to "You Can't Hurt Me." It's like, actually, yes, I can is the name of your book. No?
Yeah,
No?
I actually never looked at it as like, I want to be better than anyone else, or I want to beat anyone else, and even the current record holder. Like I don't actually, I've never really looked at it that way. It's funny you ask that now, then all of a sudden just thinking about it. But it really was totally individual to me. Like I have my own reasoning and my own drive and my own fire that's pushing me towards a certain thing. But what those guys did, for me at least, was you learn that you get to understand greatness. You get to understand the price that you have to pay to be elite and to achieve things. So when you start looking around, and the people I know too, like it's not like you have to always look to like some celebrity person to kind of learn from that. Like there's a lot of people I know in my own life that are just studs. Like it's just unbelievable how skilled and determined and strong they are. And so, but from learning from other people like that I don't know, it helped me to identify these qualities of the people around me too. Like I got a greater appreciation. And a lot of people had to go, I mean, that's the other thing too. I had to drop a lot of people too. And I'm quite a loner at this point too now. Like I live my lifestyle is very different from where it was, and in unsurprising ways, in very surprising ways.
Would you say that was like a sacrifice of trying to accomplish this goal, or like was it a necessary sacrifice?
Bit of both. Yeah, it's a bit of both. I've also kind of realized like I'm a lot more introverted now, which is very strange. Like I never would have anticipated that. But I think when you realize when you feel the calmness and the intensity of the fire when you're doing something that's pushing you so far and so hard, it really changes your perception on yourself and on what you allow into you. Yeah, it's a very interesting place because it's the calm. Like there's so much to be said for the calmness and the stillness. And that doesn't mean that it's not interesting. It's intense. It's super intense. And it's difficult to allow people into that. Because if you're allowing someone into that who doesn't understand it, they're going to bull in a china shop. They're going to start messing things up for you. Not like it's an intentional thing. They just don't understand you. But if you're lucky enough, and I'm pretty lucky and with a lot of people that I know that they do understand. And so to let them into that, to kind of give them insight into this like intensity and it's not just like a manufactured thing. It's like you're actually seeing who I really am, you know, and that's like a really new thing for me to actually like you're being vulnerable in a way, but like one of the things that was interesting, sorry if I'm going on this crazy tangent. I'm like trying to think, I'm like, God, what did Jess ask me? And then I'm like going down this thing right now, but I'll try and pull it back. But like what was really interesting, so I have two brothers, an older and younger. And what was really interesting about it was, so like most of my training too, like no one ever saw it. I did no social media. That's changing now, unfortunately. But I mean, it's a good thing. So I mean, like I really enjoyed the darkness of it. Like I loved, like no one really knew what I was doing and how I was doing it, but I knew, and I knew that I was advancing, and I knew that I was getting good, and I like that. Like it's, and I'm a huge, massive, stupid Batman nerd.
It's funny because as you were saying, like
you're totally I can feel you. You're like Batman in the Batcave.
Talking about Batman right now.
And so like I love that. Like it was kind of like you kind of got to like that kind of childhood. You're kind of getting more in touch with like who I was as a kid, and I was like this unbelievable kid, and I like really lost my way for a really long time, and now I'm like kind of back to that point, and it's awesome. And
well, I think that feels like a superpower, and
it
like
is.
You've mentioned how like more than the physical work, it was the mental and cognitive work you did to sort of get to this place. So at a certain point, it's like you're kind of walking around with this little secret, like I could do XYZ if I wanted to right now. And, you know, maybe even when you talk about how you've sort of lost some people along the way because you're at this level.
I don't miss them.
Right? But you're also like, you know, taking in a lot of what got you to where you are, and almost like you have to keep working that high level mental state and cognition to maintain that, which seems like a lot. But if you've kind of made the habit of it, it's always like you're just building on it. So I find that very interesting because it's definitely not a place where I am right now. And so hearing that it's almost like this thing you've just worked on, not simply, but it, in a way, it just comes down to the simple thing of making the decision to work on that. So
making the decision to work on it and making the decision to not quit. I think once you kind of recognize, like, I'm just not going to quit. Like, I don't care what happens. You're not going to, this is going to happen, or you're going to die trying. Like, it really is. Like, I know that might sound like a bit dramatic, but that's actually
what's the alternative?
That's like, you're fighting for your life, because the whole point of this thing is that there's, like, you know, one of the things that you asked me in the pre-interview was, or actually, I think it was during an appointment, and we're chatting, and one of the things you said was like, how are you going to feel? This is kind of how I'm going to phrase it, which was, how are you going to feel like after you get it? Like, how are you going to fill that void? And actually, I didn't actually look at it that way, because I'm not doing it for. Here's what you get. You get the record. You get a piece of paper that says your name, the reps, and where you did it. That's it. I'm not doing it for that. What I'm chasing is perseverance, determination, high level problem solving, pain,
The self-development.
commitment. Like that's what I'm chasing. And that's what I'm doing. Like you're chasing, but you're doing it. And so for me, it's like, cool, you get this one thing, but then I got 5 other things that come in right after that are the same thing, but they're just different. It's not a record. It's your profession, your projects, your relationships. Like, so, what I'm trying to achieve is sort of like proof or validation that you can pursue something that's bigger than yourself and attain it, and you can do it again. And that's just who you are. This is what you do. And this is the level that this is, and talking about potential, I really feel like for the first time in like a really long time, like I'm so certain that I'm exactly where I need to be. And I've pushed off my profession to achieve this. Like it's come at like like I don't want to make it sound like, oh yeah, like, this has come at like significant sacrifice. Like I have 6-figure student debt. I'd be debt free by now and in the black, like big time. And okay, like financial sacrifice is not everything, but that's kind of a big deal. When you think about what my family's had to sacrifice to put me through university and to do all those things, and you go, okay, I'm going to get there and I'm going to do that. But there's something about this that's just like, it's got such a whole, like just complete obsession, complete obsession, but not delusion. Like it's, you know, when you're in the right place and there's something internally that it puts a hold on you, but not in like a negative way. It's like holding your hand. Like it's comforting. Like it's this thing it's enticing, right? Cause it's enticing, but it's also like building you up and building up the people around you. And I think that's kind of how when you see the people around you becoming better because of you and they tell you it's because of you, first of all, it's really embarrassing, but it's also like it's such a crazy feeling, especially for someone who was like so incredibly self-conscious and like had really significant issues in that area for so many years of my life. And I always wondered, like I never really felt like I gave the best of myself to other people. I never really felt that I made anyone better. And maybe I did, and I don't know, but it's kind of, that's like sad. Like that's a sad way to live, And I think a lot of people live that way, and it's really unfortunate. But now it's kind of like what I realize is that, to change people around you, if you want to change the world, it starts with you. That's really how it is. The individual is what goes into the collective and makes the collective a better place. And I'm kind of seeing now, and that's why I have such a greater appreciation. Like I kind of understand the magnitude of like what I'm trying to do, because I never looked at it like, oh my God, like it's this record and holy, like I never once looked at it like that. I'm just like, it's a number of reps to do in a day. Go do it. Because I think also if you look at it as like this, like, like we mentioned monsters and stuff earlier, like it's kind of good to think of it that way, but also not, because you also don't want to like psych yourself out of it. Like you have to look at it as something you can do. And so being, having it be this like thing that you want to look at it as a mountain that you're just going to make the first ascent, right? It's still a mountain, but you can do it.
And it's baby steps, right? This isn't something that you undertook all of a sudden. You've had many steps along the way to get there. You've mentioned research, you mentioned support system, you've put a ton of thought into this, right? So I'm sure you did like little tiny intervals. Like how did that even start? Like,
yeah,
where do you start?
I actually was sort of like picking around with the math with it. I figure I put about 11,000 hours into this.
That's like a week, right? Like in hours? Right?
No, it's a lot. 11,000 hours. Pretty sure it's like a year and a half, 14 hours a day or something.
Yeah.
But like,
math isn't your strong suit, Cam. It's
so,
okay.
I figure I put about, and that's a conservative, like that's lowballing it, I think, but I figure I can like put my hat on that. So, 11,000 hours, and I lost the first time. And I mean, and just like before we started, like I was kind of joking around, and she was like, "Oh, you didn't lose." No, I lost, and that's okay. And we'll get into that. I didn't fail though. That's the difference. I did not fail, but I lost. And anyway.
This time.
So yes, and so sorry. So baby steps.
Yeah, like
how do you,
what was your
baby steps up a mountain, which sounds like the most annoying thing.
That sounds like it would take a very long time.
About 11,000 hours.
And I mean, like, is this baby functional or is this like a crawler? Okay. Anyway.
Yeah.
So, like, where do you start when you started this training process? When you actually started doing pull-ups or mental cognitive training? Like, what did that look like?
Yeah. So, you start with the mental side and the studying and the learning, and podcasts as well were big, like very specific podcasts. And then you're in university too, so you're also applying. These are all transferable skills. It's kind of what I was getting at earlier, which is like, okay, so everything I'm learning is actually going to make me a better student if I choose to manifest it in that way. So, okay, so that's good. So good thing I'm in university where I can put some of these things to the test. And so, you're kind of picking away and so you're talking June of 2019, and then semester started in September, and then graduated in 2020. So you're chipping away, and I can tell you right now, I mean, so I was in the UK when I did like my first, I think it was 100 rep session. And I did 50 something. And I remember I stopped, and I sat like on the coffee table because I bought a chin-up bar in our flat, and I put it in the living room in the flat. And I wasn't crying, but I was like teary-eyed because I was like you just tried to do 100 and you could only do, like, I maxed out at 50, and it was just like, you're crazy. This is like, all that comes, and that's what winning does to you. Like, it messes with your mind, and it knows, like, because that's the thing, what you're trying to accomplish is 100% mental. If anyone thinks that this chin-up record's about anything physical, it's not at all. There's just 0% physical. It's 100% mental. And so, setbacks know your insecurity, and it knows how to unwind you and just unravel you in the most deepest ways. And keep in mind, I was a much more insecure person at the time, so it didn't take as much. Now you got to hurt me pretty good to get me to buckle. But back then, a little nudge might kind of get me to fall over. Now, yeah, you got to come willing to kill, because that's what it's going to have to take to derail me. Yeah, I mean, I wish I could tell you that it was just like, and then I like pulled it together and then I did like 100. No, like, it was horrible. Like that, but that's really how I knew
that it was the right thing.
That this is what because like, this is what you wanted. You wanted to be pushed. You wanted to be stretched further than your limits. And this is the price. So if you're willing to play, do 51 tomorrow. Mm-hmm. Like, that's literally how it kind of came down to it. And I mean, I don't know, like, you just kind of slowly start to elevate. You have to keep in mind too, like, I had no coach, I had no psychologist, I had nothing. I had me. I had no one helping me at the time. Because why would anyone help me at the time? You also have to prove yourself. Now what's interesting is that the amount of people, I have like a team of people helping me for this next attempt. Social media, sponsorships, logistics. Like, it's really unbelievable. And like, I don't know if I like actually even like deserve that. Like the amount of people that are so just like on board and supporting what I'm doing. It's weird. Like, it's such a weird feeling because I'm just like 25 and like, I'm Marcus and I don't know what's going on. Like, it's so strange, but that comes with proving yourself. And so, I mean, I guess, really, I guess the short answer to your question is just I did not quit. no matter what, just don't quit. And that's basically what got me through it, because it was complete hell. I mean, I also had to deal with like demons inside of me that were living there for like all of my teenage years, and then really up until like my first year of university, and second year of university I kind of pulled it together pretty good, and then the snowball effect was coming in hard, and that's when the real elevation in my skills and in the results too. Because it's one thing to pursue something and like kind of not really see the result, but I was getting results. And so again, that's that little enticing thing where it's just like, yeah, keep coming.
That's the carrot at the end.
Yeah.
Did you ever have a point that was almost a breaking point where you almost quit?
Not really. No, not really.
But I wanted to hear something really inspirational about how you pulled yourself out of that.
Well, I got one for you.
Yeah.
So
There we go.
in August of 2020, like my personal life like fell apart in the most dramatic, crazy way. So I was in the UK,
and that was
and
like
this is COVID.
start of COVID.
We're in the middle of it, and the UK was like roughing it. It was bad. And so my roommate went home he's from Hungary, so he was gone. I actually didn't even see him. He left before I even got there. Most of my British friends didn't live in the city. They lived elsewhere in the country, so they went home. Yeah, and things just like really fell apart. So, okay, like by then I'm still like training and stuff, right? But things were really bad. Like things were really bad. I mean, there were days where like I would be in bed and it would take me like 4 or 5 hours just to get up. Like I would just be staring at the ceiling and just like, what the fuck is going on? And the only thing that I had was that record. Like that was the only thing that there was the only stability I had in my whole life at the time. And it was just like I never thought that I could actually feel that bad. Like, like, okay, you've had people die and people you love die and stuff like that. But like, there's different kinds of pain, right? And I could tell you right now, the pain of losing that first attempt, that was pain like I've never experienced before, but different, right? So just my whole concept of like what suffering and pain is, it's interesting because it's like, it's so subjective and there's like, it hits you in different ways too. But anyway, just without the tangents. Yeah, that was the only thing I could rely on. And I remember one workout and I filmed it. And I went up to the university because we had this outdoor like pull-up. It's kind of, I always call it like your prison workout because it's like a jungle gym type pull-up bars and shit like that. It's really nice.
Most of Europe has those outdoor gym
yeah,
spaces.
They're cool.
They're phenomenal. Yeah.
Yeah. And the campus is really nice and it's in this like massive grass field and it's on the top of the hill. So you always get the sunset, especially because it was August. So it's summer, right? And, I remember I said to myself, I'm like, okay, so you're going to like, that was the only thing I did that day. It was August 18th, I think. And that was the only thing I was going to do that day because I couldn't muster the strength to do anything else. And I also had lost like 20 pounds because when I'm stressed, I have it's only happened a few times in my life where shit's really hit the fan. And I lost like 20 pounds in like less than 2 weeks or something. Like it was bad. And
Bet it made the chin-ups easier though.
It definitely did not. Because my strength went along with it. And that was the thing. And I have my Jocko Under Armour that says "Get After It" on it. It's a long sleeve one, and so I like put it on, and I'm like, what would like listen to Jocko? Like you're too broken to help yourself right now, and so like what would Jocko like? He's your mentor. You've never met him, but he's your mentor. He's your teacher. What is he telling you to do? He's telling you to get up and go. Okay, I'm going to get up and go. And I brought a weight vest, a 25-pound weight vest. I put it on, and I walked up to the university, and I was pretty much crying, like, the whole time. Like, I was just, it was bad. And I get up there, and I put my phone down, and I hit record, because I knew if I hit record, I'll do the workout, because it's like you're accountable, right?
Which is why I film myself the majority of the time. because now I have to do it.
And I've almost never do that, which is funny. I've only ever done it like a handful of times. Now things are going to be a bit different. But like at that time, because again, I like the darkness of like training in the shadows. It was fun. But I'm like, if I don't do this, I'm not going to do it. So, okay, like do it. So you put it on, you're recording and whatever you're doing, your reps or whatever. And like, I remember like a couple times I had to stop and I was just like just the pain was just like so much. And then it was like, but like I could see the phone, right? And you're like, okay, like I bet you can't do 20 more. Like, so then it kind of became like, okay, like go do 20 and then did 25 or whatever. And like you did like a few more than what you said and you stop again and then you kind of do it again and you get back to it. You lift and you stop again. And then you just kind of, you know, you kind of think about like where you're going and why you're doing it. And like the fight kind of comes back a bit, right? And then you finish. So anyway, I ended up doing like a really, like it was, I can't remember the figure, but it was like pretty respectable workout. It was like a good 200-300 rep workout, like legit. And with the vest and my body was beat to shit. Like you're down 20 pounds, like what the hell, right? So for me to accomplish that under the circumstances was pretty damn good. And then I remember I just like talked into the camera and like I was just crying because like then you can let go, right? Like you pulled it together and like pulled it together as much as pulling it together could be under the circumstances. And you know, then you just let it go and it was like, okay, cool, like it's over now. Like you did something that you didn't think you could do on your own. You needed Jocko to tell you to get up and go, but I got up and went, right? I did it. Jocko wasn't here. I listened to him, but I did it. Mm-hmm. And so that was interesting too, because then I realized like, you got more in you. Even when you're broken, you got more in you, you know? But yeah, it really took me a while to get over like that kind of personal thing. But I did. And I don't know what would have happened if it wasn't for that chin-up record. Like, it would have been like, man, it would have been so much worse. Like, man, like, so I really was fortunate that I had something to cling on to kind of keep my head above the water, you know? Because it also was so strange to be alone. Like, I'm talking alone on a, like, level that's, like, alone. No one there, no friends, families thousands of miles away. You got nothing other than you. And thank God, I'm pretty sure, the Last Dance documentary was out at the time, I think, right? 2020? I think so.
Or it had, like, just
I think it was April. It came out in April or March, so it must have been. But yeah, thank you, MJ, because my God, but no, I mean that was the thing that I could rely on, and it got me to where I am now.
Going to the day that you actually did compete, I know you mentioned you had a similar moment in the pre-interview to kind of what you just described. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
I mean, it was a bit. Can you remind me actually?
Yeah, you said halfway through your attempt that you had a moment where you're like, I'm done. Like, this is it.
So unfortunately, like, you know, lessons learned. I made, because again, you can't blame anyone else. This is on you. Like, the success or failure of something like that is entirely on you. So you have to have 100% ownership of that. And I do, and it was fine. Like, whatever. You know, you make the mistake, you learn, you patch it up. Short-term memory, all good. But yeah, like I did so much wrong. Like, so like the lead up, like the 2 weeks before, I felt the worst I had felt the whole training. Like that whole year of 2021, the worst I felt was that 2 week period. I had a lot going on in my mind too. Like I had a couple things that were taking my focus, and I allowed it to happen. Nothing like problematic, but just like, you know, your future and stuff, like decisions that need to be made. Those were weighing heavy on me, and so I was like, okay, so those were kind of pulling the life force out of me a bit. The day before, like actually the 2 days before, like I was just really busy doing bullshit, like just doing work stuff and setting up and like just shit that I should not have been doing. Like last minute sponsorship messages and outreach, like just mistake. But that thing, you know, whatever you focus, energy is a product of focus, and you can generate energy. You can create energy when there's none around you. Like Goggins said, one of the things that he said was that you have to invent strength when there's no strength to be found. It's in his book, something like that. And how I view that, which I think is basically what he's saying, is that energy is a product of focus. If you really want something, you know, and how do you explain like the MJ flu game? Now it's we know it's the food poisoning game, but the flu game in game 5, game 5. Like the dude was like so sick and he got like 40 points and basically that was the series, you know, then they closed it out. Like how do you explain that physically? You can't. He just wanted to win so badly. His focus was so intense and on it, and he found it. He found energy. He manufactured energy and got the job done. So getting back to your question, yeah. So I make all these mistakes. I'm doing all the things I shouldn't be doing. Like even the day before, right? It was just like chaos. And the day before I did a 100 rep workout, and I was so terrified because I did it, and I was with my dad, and I was like, Dad, this is bad. Like I had no explosive energy. I was tired. My heart rate was jacked up. Like it was probably only like 140, but for 5 reps, it shouldn't be going that high. Like that has never happened all year. All this training, all the sacrifice. Like I can't even describe how much I had to give and how much shit that I had to like give up in order to do that. You know, for the opportunity to break the record, because it doesn't matter how much hard work you put into it, you still got to execute, and that really is opportunity, and whether you can seize it, which is dependent on you. And I was like, holy shit, like tomorrow's gonna be a rough day. But you know what's funny? I never considered that I wasn't gonna do it. That was the funny thing. Delusional, or you know, I like to think you got cojones that are like, you know, kind of big or whatever, right? But it's just like, I think that's also a bit of ignorance too, because anyway, we'll kind of hopefully come back to that. But anyway, so yeah, you know, you start anyway, fast forward December 19th, 8 a.m., 7 a.m., 8 a.m. You start, and I mean, I was pretty dialed in. Like I was pretty, because you know, it basically was like, my whole attitude was like, stack the deck and I'm going to win. Like cut my arm off, I'll get the record still. Like that is like the and I actually believe that, by the way. Like that is complete insane. But I actually believe that 100%. You know, yeah. So, you know, you're chipping away. And I actually felt not bad. I kind of felt the calmness of like the zone. Like this is what you've trained for. You know, be the darkness, you know, like this is intense, calm focus and enjoy it. Yeah. You know, no, seriously. And just, you know, execute. Okay. So we get to 2,000. So we get to 2,000 reps. I can't remember what time it was. It was like midday. Yeah. Sorry, the math is jumbled in my head right now. But anyway, so it's about midday. And I was sitting there, and my older brother was with my nephew, his son. And, you know, I was so angry. Like, I was so angry on like a level that was just like, all this fucking sacrifice and all this shit that I had to go through to get here, and you're tired at 2,000. Like it was fury on like this other level. And and thankfully my nephew was there. I mean, and that was a huge thing for me, which is kind of funny because like I really wasn't like all that excited when I found out I was going to have a nephew. Like, that sounds like really harsh to say, but like just my personality, like I don't tend to get excited over future things. Like I'll be excited when they happen. And like when my nephew was born, like, oh my God, like it's just like, he's actually at my house right now. And I'm like, I'm going to have to go see him later. Cause I'm like, I had to say bye. And he like with the face as I'm walking out the door, I'm like, shit. All right. I'll see you later, buddy. But, don't worry. Uncle Marcus is coming back. And just like, that was a really big one for me because like, just like the amount of love that I have for this baby, like I would take a bullet for this baby, like without even thinking about it. And like, that is a weird thing. Cause I'm like, this guy can't even talk to me. Like, how do you love this guy so much? Like, he's just like this little thing. Right. But like, I just love him so much. And, you know, he's there and my brother's holding him and I'm just like looking at him. And then I was holding him, and on the recording, like I'm holding him and I'm crying. Like I'm bawling. And I wasn't like sad. I was just like, dude, like you have like for like your nephew's here right now and he's this little baby. And what I kept thinking about was like, when I think about the impact that MJ has on me, he did all this shit before I was born. I mean, okay, I was born in 96. He won his last championship in 98, but he did pretty much all this shit before I was born. And then 20 years later, some kid from Vancouver is trying to do something, and this documentary comes out, and you see like that it's okay to be who you are, and that in order to get what you want, you have to be who you are. And to see the competitiveness and the focus and the emotion and just the amount of shit this guy had to go through to be the greatest competitor of all time. And I'm like holding my nephew and I'm like, you have an opportunity to do this for him right now. Like right now is your time to maybe have the effect on this little baby, you know, and he's family. Like, you know, I know it makes me emotional. I love him so much. And, you know, and I just kind of, I don't know. I just found something, you know, I don't really know what it is. Cause I gotta be honest with you. Like that day is like pretty blurry. Like it's pretty blurry. I don't,
would be, yeah.
Yeah. Cause you know, when you're in the zone, like you're so intensely focused, but not thinking. It's this weird paradoxical place to be in. It's unbelievable.
I like to picture it as you're on a conveyor belt that's just moving through time, but everything's fuzzy and you're not really looking at anything. That's kind of what it feels like.
It's like, I don't know how to just, I mean, if I start describing it, I think people might tune out because I'm like, this dude is out of his mind. But it's so calm and powerful. Like it's so encapsulating. Like it just like pulls you in and just like
It's kind of the eye of the storm.
Yeah.
I feel like
good.
serene is
It's
my
a good
favorite word
place.
for it.
Yeah.
It feels
It's awesome.
like everything is just comfortable, and powerful is definitely a word I would use to describe in that moment, because you feel capable of absolutely anything. Like nothing can stop you.
And it hurts too. Like that's the thing. Like you're not like, it's not like you're immune. Like you actually feel the fatigue and the pain.
But you can
like,
ignore it better.
And that's the thing. And you make the choice. Like you make the choice to like, I don't give a shit. Like, cool. The sky is blue. My arms hurt. Move on. Like
I have
whatever,
one arm.
dude.
The other got cut off some way. But I said I would do this with one
Roll
arm.
with it.
So here we are.
Yeah. So that part was interesting. And so now I understand that, you know, like if he wasn't like, let's just say my nephew wasn't there at that time. Right. Let's just say that like what would have happened. I think I would have been able to pull it through because I was furious either way. It just so happened that I, you know, was holding on to like this like vibrant, beautiful little creature, you know, and you could kind of like generate something from him too. And the people, like there's other people there too. Like, so there's a lot of love and support around you, but ultimately, you know, it has to come from within, right? I mean, you know, even if it is external, you got to pull it in. right? So it still demands that you have the focus and the idea to draw on that and pull it in. The greater you are, the more experience you get, you can pull things. Like MJ used to make shit up. He used to make things up to motivate him. Like that whole thing about making up people saying things about him to challenge him, that is so high level. Like it didn't get the amount of attention it should have, but like that type of high level focus is so unbelievable and just like awesome. So that's kind of what I did, just at like a very low amateur level. Cause I'm holding this little baby and you just, cool. Thanks, Mr. Madden. You know, I just take that energy from him and
after
use
that
it.
You did like 1751
17,
more.
yeah, 31
so you almost
or
doubled.
41.
You felt done at 2000 and then you almost doubled it based off of pulling energy from something else. And I know you said you pulling energy from nothing, but
there was nothing.
It is
you
nothing,
have to find it.
But you found it somewhere. It's not like you're just like, oh, there it is.
You made it.
You made it.
Oh, and it was like, holy shit, man! Like this is it. Like this is it. All this effort, all this work, 2000, and you're done. Like what is like? So it was like I'm like, you need to figure this out now. And you know, you're talking about like, okay, the speed that you can talk and the speed that you can think. I mean, it's like 1,000 to 1 or something, right? Like, and especially for me, like I have a really good ability to just like go 1,000,000 miles an hour, but be like it's not chaos. It's very ordered thinking and, you know, variables and pulling it all out and how that all interacts and
a
pull it all in.
very bureaucratic hurricane.
Yeah, that's a good one actually. I like that. That's a trademark right there. So
you got it.
There you go. You got it. And
hurricane.
you know, and so that was good.
Like
You know, it taught me a lot. And then unfortunately, you know, one of the things you Jess asked me in the pre-interview was like, why did you call it?
Yeah, what made you decide to call it?
Yeah, I lost my composure, and it's as simple as that. It's as simple as that. I had more to give. So Goggins did the pull-up record, and I was doing the chin-up record, right? So they are two different exercises. Keep that in mind. But I was on pace to destroy Goggins' record by about an hour and a half. 4,030 was his. I'm pretty sure it was
His
4,030.
first attempt, correct?
No, his third attempt.
That was his third.
Goggins got, I think it was about halfway and halfway. It's in his book. I don't remember the figures.
Because I know the reps that you did in your first attempt actually beat his first 2 attempts.
Yes.
Correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
by
that's,
a lot.
Yeah, which is pretty crazy when you
Yeah.
think about it. But also your training has been pretty crazy too. So
Yeah,
that's probably
yeah.
part of the reason.
It's good, yeah. But it just goes to show, like, and same with the current pull-up guy who, you know, is Army Ranger guy, and the current chin-up holder, he's a British guy. I don't think he's like military. He's just, he's like an older, like he's in his 40s or whatever. And I gotta review his story, but I'm pretty sure that he did it because his brother died, and it was like a hang gliding accident or parasailing. It was kind of this like really unusual thing, and his brother passed, and so I think he was doing it to raise money for that. So he had like
strong motivation.
Yes, and you know, for him to do that, I mean, I have such tremendous respect for him and for Goggins, and Tucker is the current pull-up guy. You know, so, and I'm a 25-year-old law student with painted fingernails and a mohawk, and you know,
Why not?
right? And so like that part. Well, okay, so actually I'll finish that thought. So what frustrated me about calling it at 37 was I lost my composure and I couldn't regain it. Okay. But I had the opportunity to beat Goggins' record, even though it's a different activity, but, you know, it's same difference, but, you know, at a certain level, right? You know, and I had an opportunity and I missed it. I had a shot and I missed it. And that was a tough one. But then what kind of made me feel all right about it was like, look who you are and look at the company you're in. And that was like, even like for me to like sit here and say it out loud is really weird, because I can remember not so long ago being just this horrifically insecure, you know, sad, so sad, you know, just this guy who just didn't like himself, couldn't look at himself in a mirror, like literally, you know, and like you're here now because of you know, like no one, I don't want to say like no one helped me, because you always have help, but like ultimately if I would have called it quits a year and a half ago, like, oh, I'm going to train and I'm good now, no one would have said anything. It would have, oh, okay, it's okay, you know, good, just go do something else, right? You know, go be a lawyer, right? That's what you went to freaking school for, so, you know, but you know, go do that. You know, but like you're here in the company of like pretty good people, and like, who are you? Like that part's like really cool. Like I'm like pretty proud of that.
It's interesting that you frame it that way. Like you've wandered into the Valley of Giants, and you somehow get away without having imposter syndrome. It sounds like it just, because like normally in this kind of an interview, that's where somebody goes like, and I wasn't worthy.
Oh, I'm worthy.
But you know, it like, and it just inference alone, kind of what I've picked up. Like you've come from a good place, right? Mm-hmm. Like it's like your dad was there supporting you.
Oh yeah,
you know,
tremendous support.
Good relationship with a family, family that could put you through law school in Britain. Like it's you know, like you've had good like kind of like steps you know, carved out of the mountain for you along the way to get started. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I mean, like it's a really unique perspective to come into that, like I say, like to walk into the Valley of the Giants and not have that sense of imposter syndrome. Is there anything kind of like tangible to that, because you're very good at talking? Is there anything like tangible to that you can bring to the table? Because I think a lot of people, like, that might be the disconnect, right? Because a lot of people
get imposter syndrome.
Well, I mean, and not even imposter syndrome. I mean, you talk about the fact that like if you hadn't you know, attempted this, if you hadn't stuck to this a year and a half prior to the attempt, people would have told you just to, you know, okay, well, that's cool, go off and do something else, be a lawyer.
No one would have flinched.
No one would have flinched, right? Like, so like, is the difference, like, I mean, like, right at the beginning, you brought up kind of the, like, nature versus nurture thing in not so many or very many more words.
Probably very many unnecessary words, but yes.
But like, is there anything to that? Because one of the things that you talked about at the outset of this was the fact that like you've always been athletic, and that's kind of you know, there's a genetic aspect to it, but there's also a nurture aspect to it too, because it sounds like you came from a very good environment, which is a blessed thing, to be like, you know, frank, and I'm not putting that down at all. Jealous maybe, but not putting it
rightfully
down.
So. I'm very fortunate. Yep.
Yeah. So how do you bottle that into, you know, like a statement of that people can like build off of, I guess?
Yeah, so that imposter syndrome thing is interesting, and I definitely felt that earlier on, and then I realized that, and what I'm about to say is from Tim Grover, who was MJ, Kobe, and Dwayne Wade's trainer, among many other elite NBA players. But I realized that imposter syndrome it's a weight on my ankle, and you can only go so far. And that son of a bitch is gripping on you, and that's it. And I kind of looked at it, and I think I mentioned it earlier, but to tie it in, to get what you really want, you have to be who you really are.
Oh. Trademark.
Well, he's got it. Tim's got it already. That is who I am. And that's like crazy for me to say that. Like the guy that was doing the chin-up thing, and the guy who got himself through that fucking shit in, August. And that was in the middle of exam period, by the way. And so I pulled out 2 exams and aced both of them. And that still to me is the most impressive thing that I've ever done. And when I get the record, that will still remain the best thing I've ever done. For me to have done that was so unbelievable, and that actually is kind of when I realized, like,
I can do this.
whoa.
Yeah.
Like, what I did was so to me, I don't know how I did that. Sitting here, I don't know how I did it. But I did it. And that just goes to show there's something in you. And you know, December 19th, that's who I really am. That is who I really am. And what was so awesome about that, you know, I was getting emotional while you were saying that. 'Cause I'm I cry all the time. I was watching Afterlife. Like, I finished the season yesterday. I cried for like an hour and a half. I'm like, geez.
Is it good? I've been wanting
so
to
good.
watch it.
It's great. I love it. I cry all the time again. But what was so awesome about it was because my two brothers were there, you know, throughout the day. And my dad was there from start to finish. And my mom, she was working, so she came after work and all that. And lots of friends and blah, 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 and people online checking it out. And what was really cool about it was that both of my brothers, not to me, but to my mom and dad, like in their own way, basically both said, like, Marcus is really different. Like, and my little brother was like, I have never seen him like in that way. Like, for them to see me doing that and the place where that I was in my head, and like, they saw me for who I really am. And who I really am is, like, today is who I really was when I was a kid. Like, I had that happiness and present, and like being present, and like looking up to, like, I remember watching like Kiss music videos and Paul Stanley, and I was like the like pink tassel earrings, and like, you know, you can see where I get it from. And I was just like, wow, like, but I what I recognized in him is what I recognized in me, and I was really much like that. And then, like I said, I lost that for a really long time, and now I'm kind of back to, I'd lost who I was for a really long time, and I wasn't the best person that I could have been, and I wasn't the best in relationships, and I wasn't the best son, and I lied a lot because I had to, because I couldn't let people know how sad and broken I was on the inside. And you learn to lie, and I was really good at it, like really good at it, which was bad because I could get away with it for so long. And you further corrupt yourself, and when you're young, you don't understand what that does to you. It corrupts you in such a deep way, and I had to undo all that. But I recognize that this chin-up thing gave me I don't want to say motivation because that's kind of low level, but like,
Give you the purpose, sounds like.
to lift yourself over a stupid-ass chin-up bar 6,000 times is a lot of weight, right? That's all the weight you need. You don't need more, right? And all that shit that I was carrying with me, you got to get rid of it. It will prevent you from getting this thing. And so I just recognized, like, great, I got to basically undo all the shit that I did to myself, all the corruption, all the mistakes. You got to go in there and mess around in your mind and solve it so that you can become who you are.
Is it singular? Like, is it a singular process to get rid of it all? Like,
I wish I could
like,
tell you, it's so
Is
complicated.
it just like you open a wall and push it all out, or do you have to go through all the boxes in all of the rooms?
Oh yeah. You got to go through all the boxes and all the rooms and all the dark rooms and all that sadness and all
Right.
that anger and regret and frustration and confusion. And oh man, the whole thing is just, it was complete hell. Like, the whole process was about like, but I knew, the hero's journey. Like, if you follow like Joseph, I'm just getting into Joseph Campbell now, and you're talking about like monomyth and like the 12 steps of the hero's journey. What's the process? You gotta walk into the abyss. You gotta get in there, and you come out, and you come out on the other side, and you're gonna get cut, and you're gonna be bloody, and you're gonna get broken, and you're gonna come out different than you were before. And what you do is you pick up the pieces, you put them all together in that new version. I mean, the version of me that you're seeing now has been broken and destroyed like countless times. But you pick up the pieces, you learn something a little bit different, and you come out a little bit better. And I'm going to get broken again. And even, it keeps happening.
And I think people have a misconception that, it doesn't just keep happening, but throughout your life over and over and over again, you have these junctions where you completely get destroyed. You find purpose and passion in something. You find childlike joy in a new thing, right? Because I when you were talking earlier, you really hit the nail on the head that, life is almost like trying to become a kid again, right?
Yeah, I never thought of it. I never thought of it that way.
But you're trying to find that passion again. You're trying to find something that makes you smile like nothing else, or that makes you realize something. And I feel like that's very much what you're describing. And yeah, you're right. It will happen again in some way, shape, or form. But at least now you've learned some amazing skills through this endeavor of yours that you can maybe extrapolate into a new event.
Yeah.
Oh, of course.
Absolutely.
Oh, there's so many tangible, like, transferable skills.
So many.
I mean, and I hope for you to get destroyed again.
And the weird thing is that you kind of, in a way, like, well, you don't like look forward to it, but you know that when it occurs, okay, like for the current chin-up holder, okay, I got 2 brothers. I can't even imagine one of my brothers. I'm not even going to say it. I can't even imagine like the pain of that. And it sounds like him and his brother were, close. Mm-hmm. Especially, my older brother too, because he has a son, and that's a whole other level of like, oh my God. Life is gonna basically one of the things I had to like reconcile was that life is gonna beat the shit out of you. It doesn't differentiate.
But at least you can choose how it beats the shit out of you.
I'm not going to add to it. That's what I was doing. I was adding to I was creating my own suffering and putting it on me. And I'm like, what are you doing? Like, you cannot do this. Like, this is unacceptable, man. Like, you're not who you should be. This is not okay. And cause that's the thing. And you watch that, what really freaked me out about that Last Dance documentary, especially, was when MJ's mom, and they had some footage of his dad, obviously, because he was killed many years ago. But they said things that my parents have said to me, identical, word for word. And I was like, holy shit. Like, it freaked me out on such a level. And then especially because, like, some of the things that MJ said, I'm like, I have thought that exact thing. Like, it's weird when you find something that just clicks with you, or someone that just clicks with you. And to think, like, my parents are going to go, right? Everybody dies eventually, right? Me too, right? We're all, no one makes it out, right? So just to think, like, the pain of so many things that can go wrong, and, people you love, there's suffering to be found everywhere. And man, you pick up a book on 20th century history, you want to see what suffering looks like. Good God Almighty, so it's, you don't have to look far to see that the brutality of life it doesn't differentiate. It doesn't care your color, your race, nothing, gender, none of that shit. It makes no difference. It's going to beat the hell out of every single one of us. The only difference is how you respond to that. You always have the ability to choose. Viktor Frankl talks about that a lot in his book. Because it doesn't matter. No matter what happens to you, you always have the ability to choose what to do next, and that's power, and that's stability, and strength. And certainty when things are uncertain. When shit hit the fan. For me, everything's disordered. It's chaos, and chaos is when the feelings come out. Chaos is when the negative feelings start creeping in.
Well, you have no ability to withhold it anymore. You're just immediately vulnerable, right?
Yeah, and if you don't, that emotional wave will break you so fast, and that's why you have to break it before it gets you. And it was just like, well, okay, things are not the way that I thought they were going to be, but I decide. I'm the hero of my own story. I decide how this shit plays out. And I was just like so determined and desperate too, and scared. It was great. I would never want to go through that again, but it was great. It really was. And it worked out, like.
It's funny how sometimes we look back at events in our lives that were some of the most traumatic, and then we become the most thankful for them.
Yep. That's not a new thing. I mean, the Greeks talk about that a lot. The Celts, you look through ancient history and mythology, you see that play out. So it's not like it's an original thought at all. People have figured this out thousands of years ago, and somehow we still don't. What's the answer? Pick up a book, read it. It's there, man. The answers are not original. It's all there for you. You just have to be open to looking for it and determined to understand it as well. Like I said, I mean, it's so interesting. Like as I'm like sitting here talking, conversing with y'all, to think like someone's going to be listening to this and all they're going to see is like this. And I know all the skeletons in the closet that I had to like, I don't know, what do you do with skeletons? And throw them out? I don't know what you do with them.
You hang them up at Halloween.
Extinguish them? I don't know, something like that.
And you exorcise the demons.
There you go. Yeah.
Like exercise or like exercise?
Like 1970 something movie exorcism thing. But it's so like for me to be here and for me to have done what I did and for me to do what I'm going to do is unbelievable to me. Like it really is unbelievable to think that with just determination and you had support obviously, but ultimately it was on me to get me here. It's unbelievable. Like I'm so like really for the first time in my life I can really say I am really proud of like who I am and what I'm doing, and that's you talk about potential. That's how I know. Because that's instinct. That's internal on such a different level, and it's so free. Like I realized too, like, and I got like the pain of not getting that record was so like beyond. Like that was just like wow. Like I never, and that's great that I understand what it feels like to lose. Like I can tell you right now, I ain't ever feeling that shit again, but it's gonna happen. I'm gonna lose again, but now I know, and you can utilize. Now I got pain to draw on.
That can be a strength for next time.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
When you want to quit, you remember that, and your mind has to be stronger than your feelings, and feelings, emotions make you weak. I mean, that's just as simple as that. And it's not about not having emotions, and it's not about like not showing emotion to the people you care about. It's not about that at all. But I can tell you right now, there is no place for emotion when you're trying to do something like, a record of that kind. There is no place for it. It will make you weak. It will destroy you, and you will fail. And you will fail. You will not lose. You will fail. It's different.
What if I challenged you on that? And because in that moment when you were at the 2,000 rep mark and you said like you found energy in your nephew. Isn't that kind of like taking that emotion?
I took that emotion and internally molded it into energy. It's not emotion, because emotion is
responsive.
It's responsive, and it's I don't know the term, but it like burns off quick. Like it's super. It's like a flashbang. It's just like boom, and it's like this intensity, but it's like gone. It's like 1 second, the thing's gone. I found some emotion, but that wasn't emotion playing out. That was focus. That was intensely focused energy that was playing out. But yeah, make no mistake. There is no place for emotion for things like that. It will make you weak, and you must discipline your emotions. Because emotions I mean, has anyone ever made a sound decision based on emotion? Nobody ever in the history of ever has done that. Not one person's made a good decision purely based off of emotion. It messes with you. It clouds your judgment. It makes you insecure. It makes you unsure. It makes you impulsive in a negative way.
How do people that deal from that perspective, though, how do all those people end up as world leaders and like despots?
Who?
I'm not going to name names.
Or like what do you mean? Like
I mean like people that are like high emotion, that like need to like prove themselves because of their like negative self or whatever, always end up becoming world leaders. Let's talk about, say, recent U.S. presidents or
I see what
like,
you mean.
Like because in the same vein, like you're saying, like emotion has no place, but like I would say, looking at the example of a lot of, just to keep it at that level, a lot of those world leaders are all like very.
They're horrible people. There's not a politician that's a good. They're horrible people. I can say
like
that. The worst people in the world
you gotta be
are
careful,
politicians.
man. Like, where are you going in your career here? If you're,
I'm
like
gonna
calling that out,
I'm gonna
like,
say politicians, lawyers, and journalists are the worst people you're ever gonna meet, and I'm one of them. And I know, because I know how horrible these people are. But there's also like really great people too. But yeah, no, I know what you're getting at. I would say, like in like what you're referring to, would anybody want to be he who shall not be named former president? Like, would anybody look at that and be like, oh, I want to be like that guy? I don't want to be like that guy.
I think there's about 68 million people.
Well, then that's a really sad, unfortunate thing that they should be setting their sights differently, because like something like that
how do you fix them then?
Fix yourself. I don't care. I don't have time for you. Fix yourself. I fix myself. I'm not going to help you. Well, I'll help you, but if you want the help, I'll help you. But no, fix yourself, man. No, that comes from within. It doesn't matter. That comes from within. And like there's always outliers. Like there's always going to be people who, I don't know. I'm trying to think like as an athlete.
Every person is different for what drives them, right? Like
some people I draw on my pain all the time,
right?
But it's
channel
focused.
it and it's focused. Whereas some people
intentional.
Draw on chaotic emotion, and they can still be successful. And I think that's kind of where Cam might have been coming from.
No,
maybe not successful, but not in what you were talking about.
I have no idea what I talk about.
But everyone
half the time,
pulls from different things. It's just how, I'm not going to use the word healthy, but like how efficient is it? Right? Like drawing from chaotic emotion isn't always an efficient way to achieve a goal. And I think that definitely applies to fitness really well.
Well, I mean, like, vengeance is a dish best served cold, right? And it's...
well, there is something to that, because like the best, the most...
calculated.
What's the expression?
Best
It's from Goggins.
Well.
Like your best motivators are anger and fear, in that order. Those are emotions. Anger and fear, that's emotion. But like I said, like a little bit of fear for me makes me feel like dangerous.
But
like,
you can refocus
like I say
that.
it with a smile too, because it's like it's exciting. Like it's a little bit of something to kind of fire you up.
Like when I want to try, like I've got a fish dish, but I'm going to try a red wine with it. Oh,
gets you going.
Yeah, this is eye to eye right now, buddy. Eye to eye. Oh yeah.
I can like feel when you're about to say something really silly. I'm like, okay, here it comes. Like as soon as the first word came out.
It's
like fish and wine. Why is that? What scares you?
That's dicey.
It is
dicey.
If you know, you know, and if you don't, you'll find out.
Very true.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I guess it just comes down to like, if you look at, I'm trying to think, like, I can't think of a specific athlete right now, but like
Wade Boggs.
Yeah, who? But got like my I know a lot about MJ, so I'll stick with him. Cold still, that guy, the intensity, and he was and that's why I mentioned it. He was at such a high level of performance that he had to make up things to anger him to keep him interested in playing basketball, because he just beat the hell out of everybody.
Oh, you were talking about Michael Jordan. I thought this whole time it was Michael Jackson.
Yeah. Damn. Well, he had different things going on. His airness, come on. But yeah, I mean, the emotion thing is there really is no place for it when you're trying to achieve great things. I mean, you think about since we're mentioning Goggins too, you think about any trained special forces soldier, you think they're telling them, fight like you're angry. Huh? That's how people are going to die who should not die, right? These are guys who are so calm under the most intense human experience, being warfare, that you could possibly imagine. And these guys are focused and clinical and trained to not let emotion come in and affect the execution of their job, which is to
the people.
well, and in their case, if they mess up, You know, innocent people are going to like people are going to die. Like there's nothing higher at stake than that. Right. So it's a bit, it's a bit dramatic for, like a chin up record. But, the concept is to identify the fact that, listen, when you look, I haven't watched many of them. I was waiting for them to all come out. But, Tom Brady just retired. I also have retired from watching the NFL football for the rest of my life because Tom retired. What the hell am I going to do? But, he talks about that all the time, being still. And Kobe talked about that a lot, just to be still. To be still. Let the emotion come in. It's not about being unemotional. It's not about not feeling it. You feel it, but you choose what you let in. And once it's inside you, you determine how, when, why, what. You determine all that on how to execute that. And a lot of the time, you got to just throw it away. Cool. That came in. I allowed it in. I embraced it in. Now, get the hell out of here. I don't need you right now. Yeah. Or in my case, with my nephew, it gave me something like, I'm going to run with this. And it worked out. But it's still, that wasn't emotion. It was focused. It was energy. It was combustible, long-lasting energy as a result of focus. Because that very easily could have been, oh my God, like you have to do this, you got to do this for your nephew, and it kills you. It kills you right there. You're done. Like, so it can go the other way as well, but that's focus. In that instance, that's the focus is gone. For my case, the focus was there. Unfortunately, I lost my focus and my composure, and that's a sign of my inexperience and maybe immature. Well, ignorance certainly, especially now because like I never even considered that I was gonna lose. I mean, and I would consider that a bit arrogant. It's funny, right? But I would consider that a bit ignorant too.
I remember talking to you right before you were about to do the attempt. You're like, well, I'm not gonna fail.
Yeah.
And you were just so sure. And and you know what? I actually
jackass.
No, I actually really admired that because you were so sure that it was going to happen and you were just going to do everything to make it happen. And whether you happen to succeed or not, it doesn't really matter, but that you were so sure that this is possible.
Yeah.
I think that's actually a really healthy thing to have. You're like, this is possible. Someone else has done this before. I know I've trained. This is possible. There's no doubt in my mind that it's going to happen. It just might just not happen right now.
Yeah. What I believed was, like, looking back, I can look at that because I remember that conversation. I can look at that a bit differently. But what I was feeling was that this is all within my control and I have the skills to do it. Well, then therefore the outcome is determined by me, which is I want this. And that's the outcome. What I didn't realize was that actually my skills need a bit of improvement, and we got to get to work a little bit on that. And so that's why for this next attempt, I was hoping to do it in April, but just with scheduling and stuff, it's going to be in June, and that's fine because we get to focus on the business side of that, and there's a tremendous amount of opportunity there, and I'm taking full advantage of it to capitalize on it, and for the people around me too. But yeah, it's about kind of getting the mental. It's the mental warfare side. It's understanding. I now understand what it does to me, like how it affects me. And the nice thing is I don't really have to do much external work. It's pretty much internal. Like I have the tools to like get in there. You just kind of got to get in there and play around a little bit and figure it out. But the nice thing is because I did so much work leading up to it, like I have a lot of tools in the toolbox. It's good. There's a lot of good tools in there. You just got to kind of finely tune them and craft them. And, when you think about the skill it takes to sharpen and polish a blade, it's tedious, and it's not the same as, a big lump of steel and you got to bang the shit out of it and heat it up. And, that's like hardcore blunt work. Now it's more finesse, but I did that work still. It's just now we've moved on and elevated.
Where does one get those tools? Like, is it like Sears?
Sears probably not. Sears like even around
like
still?
Eaton's?
Hasn't
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah,
like,
did
Amazon doesn't
Sears
own
go?
Sears now? Like, doesn't
Woolworths?
Amazon own everything?
I don't know. I'm curious because you talk about like you just mentioned having all these like tools that you're going to use and you're like finally honing them because they're already in the shed and they've already been forged and all that.
And they've been tested.
But where do those tools come from? Because I think that's a relevant thing to a lot of people that are listening to this is like, okay, so it's cool that motherfucker has all these like tools at his behest. I don't feel like I do. Where do I get these tools?
Where do I start?
Yeah. So, I mean, you got to remember,
Sears,
I would,
tool section.
I mean, I would say I had none. I had pretty much zero, right? So I started from like nothing. I started from like, you're screwing up your whole life. Like you're a goof. What the hell are you doing? So I basically started from nothing. You have like the shirt on your back, so to say. So you have your personality, you have your temperament, you have your strengths and your weaknesses. So first of all, you have to identify all that. You have to identify it straight up. You have to orient yourself, right? If you have a goal, right? What's the problem with a goal? It's a conclusion. Well, what good's a conclusion, right? You need the intro, you need the body of the you need the paragraphs, you need the string to link it all together. So you need a map. Well, what does a map do? A map shows your destination. It shows where you are. It shows where you need to go. Hopefully it shows where you need to avoid too, because that is nice to know, because then at least it kind of keeps you on the straight and narrow a little bit better. So first of all, you have to identify who you are as a person, who you really are, like who you are when no one's around and you're at home alone looking in the mirror, especially at the night. I mean, anytime it's quiet for me, I mean, that's when shit gets real, because there's no distractions, hence the countless sleepless nights of screwing with your head. But you have to identify, you have to orient yourself. Who are you? You need to figure all that stuff out. So that's step one. I supplemented that with learning from other people, reading a ton of books. And law school is interesting too. You learn about cases and you philosophically, like jurisprudence, you learn about concepts and it kind of gets the cogs turning. You go, oh, okay, it kind of applies over here. And so how you learn is entirely up to you. I mean, I'm just telling how I learned. And that was sort of how it started. And I really did a good job at identifying how to utilize my strengths to attack my weaknesses, because that's really what we're talking about. Again, how and what and when you do that, I don't know. That's up to you to figure out, because everybody's got their own thing going on. So once you're oriented, you have your start point, you're on the map, and now you need to know where to go. So you need direction. So then that's when the goal perhaps becomes effective, because if my goal is ahead of me, then I go that way. If my goal's over here, I go that way. You're also going to have to, there's many side quests too. That's the thing. So strategy and tactics. You have the strategic goal that you're trying to achieve, and there's going to be many tactical battles that you're going to have to go through along the way. You just have to be careful, because the problem with tactics is that it's kind of easy to lose your way. You get distracted with all the little fires you got to put out. So you have to ensure that where you're going is, tactically is true to the strategic purpose. An easy example was for me, I had to learn how to speed read. Speed reading gets a bad rep too, because it's you just skim and you don't remember. I can remember page numbers and lines and all this shit, because when you're speed reading, you're actually more dialed in and more focused than you would be if you're just reading normally. So I got a reading speed of 900 words a minute, which I've had to develop. It took me a little while to develop. It's a skill. If you look up Limitless by Jim Quick, it's a book, teaches you how to speed read in there. It's got a section on it. Have at it. It's really good. So that's an example of this little tactical thing that I had to do, because in order to be strategic, I have to learn a lot of things, but I need to learn it quickly because I don't have a lot of time to dick around here. So I also had to understood okay, now I can read 600 words a minute. Cool, move on. You know the skill. Now you got to keep going. And just by learning along the way, I elevated my ability to speed read, and now it's like really fast, and that's awesome. And I hope to, really move it up even further. So you got to be careful about don't get in the weeds too much. Get what you need, take it with you, put it in your pocket, and keep your ass moving. And then after that, it's just kind of more of the same. Like, just always, you have to understand the strategic element of it. And one thing that was really helpful for me was, like, this was from Jocko too. I'm like, thank you, Jocko. Awesome. Ethos. That's a cool one. Personal ethos. Write that down. You can look up like a Viking creed or Spartan creed, like creed, ethos. There's another
Personal
word for
motto?
it. Yeah. But it's longer. It all means the same thing. But that is like really helpful for the strategic value because that is hard to derail, especially if you have it written down. You can look at it. And I actually had some notes that I wrote down during the record that helped me kind of sort of remind myself why I'm here. And on the chin-up bar, probably don't have time to get into it, but one of the things I wrote on the only thing I wrote on the chin-up bar was roots in hell and branches to heaven. It's a Carl Jung concept, one that I have virtually no understanding of, but Carl Jung's kind of is hard stuff to understand, but for me, it's hard. I don't know. I mean, but that kind of reminded me, like, what I understood about that is like, okay, the hero's journey. So like, no matter how hard, things are right now, like in order to get to paradise, you got to go through hell. So like, just, it's okay. Remember that. Now I have a much better lesson of that. But having like a personal ethos, and I would say what you want in that, like, I'm saying this as an exercise, like, do this, literally do this. What you want to focus on are characteristics or traits. How does perseverance, loyalty, love, there's so many, I'm completely blanking on all of them right now. But like, identify traits, and then how does perseverance fit into your life story? And you write 2, 3, 4 sentences. Like, don't go crazy into it, but like, identify, this is the purpose of this, and this is the purpose of that, and identify it, concrete, write it down. By writing things down, you are detached from it. You gain situational awareness. It becomes a part of you, and it becomes separate simultaneously. It's this awesome thing. So I would say that's kind of like, keep in mind, you're talking to like a 25-year-old, and like, what the hell do I know? So like, grain of salt, I would say. But I mean, that stuff worked pretty well for me, and the nice thing is I'm at least getting results. Like, I haven't got the result that I am looking for, but it wouldn't really be that interesting if I got it on the first attempt anyway, so it's, I thought it would have been, but other people have said that, so I guess I'll just parrot that. But, and you have to believe in yourself. You really have to believe in yourself.
That's the easiest thing to say and the hardest thing to do, though.
It is, yeah. Because the only way that you don't get derailed is the belief. The belief in yourself. Because, I mean, the amount of people who, even just little comments like, oh yeah, like, you got the mohawk still? Like, yeah. But like, I like what I'm doing, and like, it's cool. But like, a little comment like that would derail me 2-3 years ago, because I just wasn't secure in what I was doing and confident, and I'm like, yeah, I'm just like being me, and it turns out that I'm quite eccentric, especially because my 2 brothers are like, not at all. It's hilarious. But it's just like, you have to be who you are, and you also got to recognize too, you're gonna be to do what I'm doing. Don't be like me. Be better than me. Okay, like, don't try and. I'm fucking 25, okay? Like, aim higher, all right? Then, like, don't copy. But I think I got.
You're just saying pick an older person, it sounds like.
Pick an older person who's, like, done actual things.
Like,
oh,
my God, they're 30. They're so much better than that guy.
Yeah, that's right. But, it's going to be, it's really lonely.
Yeah.
Like I'm alone all the time. I have no personal life as well, by the way. I'm completely obsessed with what I'm doing.
You're really selling this.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No,
but I
it's,
think
but
a
you
lot
have
of people
to understand
forget that a lot of high performance and
it's
really
dark.
high, it's
Yeah.
lonely.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah.
And you have to be, and if you don't believe in what you're doing, that is going to be difficult to deal with. And I mean, okay, we all make mistakes and all fall off and emotion gets the better of me. And a couple of weeks ago, I had like a 1-day meltdown. It was quite funny because I'm also kind of dramatic. So that was kind of funny. But, we all have our moments, but you pick the pieces back up and you keep going, but you have to have that. And, you're going to be alone and different. People don't like different. People don't like different. Once you identify yourself as once you prove yourself to be different, like as my brother said, like he is different. That scares people. Thankfully, they love me, so they're cool with it. They don't like the painted nails, but they are pretty much cool with everything else. But they love me, and so I'm very lucky, and that's great. But, for friends and stuff, it's, it's a bit difficult. They don't really know what to do with me a lot of the time. So I don't really hang out with friends a lot. You play hockey and you hang out after, like last night I was at the rink till 1:30 in the morning and made sure I got plenty of rest for the podcast, right? But, very professional of me. But, you're not going to get invited because I said no to everything. I got to train. I got to do this. I got to do that. I got to read. I got to blah, blah, blah. So, you say no enough, people are going to stop asking. You're going to have to say no. So people are going to stop asking. So you got to be prepared to handle that. And loneliness messes with you. I mean, and loneliness messed with me big time, but that was all right. Now I got the skills from that. So it's difficult, like I don't, like every 25-year-old I know doesn't do what I do. And you're very different from, I'm very different from a lot of the people around me. And I'm just like, yeah, but that's who I am.
And it's more fun for you.
It is more fun, and it is and it isn't, like I said, there's a price to pay for everything, and there's a pretty steep price with this whole process, and there's more that's going to be required of me to pay, and I'm going to pay it without pretty much any hesitation.
Like we often talk about like what brings you joy, and it sounds like everything you're doing currently brings you joy.
It does, yeah.
And maybe there'll be a point, like maybe this is what's always going to keep bringing you joy, because it sounds like at this point you're very passionate about like leveling up and seeing who you can be and challenging yourself. And you said you're very competitive, but maybe at a certain point there will be this next breaking point and it'll make a shift, and maybe something else will bring you joy, and maybe that will bring people around you and less loneliness, or maybe it won't. But kind of like you say, that's a big sacrifice. But I think for others, maybe they're not doing these breaking points and leveling up, and they're surrounded by people, and that's what brings them joy. So I think, what you've been saying all this time is like, I am who I am. And
Popeye.
Like,
which is, I was going to say, it's very like Lady Gaga of you.
Yeah.
It
Well,
is.
you think about like what Kiss
You're born
did.
this way.
Yeah. I love that. I love the country version too, because there's a lot of good slide guitar in that. I play guitar as well. You probably could have figured that out, but I don't really care about chin-ups. Like I'm not like passionate about chin-ups. Like I actually couldn't care less about chin-ups.
I don't think we've gotten that at all from
but
this either.
but
This is
what
such
I
a bigger
appreciate
thing.
about the record and what I'm passionate about the record, it's just the specific vessel to demonstrate these qualities that I long for, and I think I do possess some of them in some way, but I'm looking for more, always looking for more, and never really satisfied. There's always more to go. There's always another level. Even I talked about, like I mentioned instinct, and now I trust my instinct wholehearted. I don't question it at all, ever, never. It's always right. Shut up and do what it tells you to do. But then there's a point too where then your instincts trust you, and there becomes this like really interconnected relationship. And I feel like I'm kind of getting a taste of it now, but I can't fully articulate it because I don't really understand it, to be honest with you. I need a bit of time to like get into it.
We'll check back when you're 30.
There you go. I probably will have a pretty good idea of it by then. But yeah, you know, it's yeah, you got one life to live, you know, and you know, I've spent so much time like just being a goof and just like not doing things that I
it can't
knew.
be that much time. You're only 25.
But it was percentage wise, man, like, dude, that's enough. Like that was enough. You know, and to think like, you know, and I recently also had it was weird because my nephew was born, and a friend of mine that I knew since we were about 5, he killed himself. And that was really strange because he was my like most trusted teammate. He was the only guy that was as competitive as me and was faster than me. So we always would race and, you know, playing soccer and stuff, and we'd push each other, and like we were fiercely competitive with each other, but in a really constructive way. And he was this nice guy, and he had really I don't know the extent, but he had, you know, obviously some very serious mental health issues for a long time, and it was so shitty to hear that happened. And it was at the same time that my nephew was born, and like, so that was like, just my nephew being born alone really changed my outlook on things. And then for my friend to go at that same time, like that was just like, holy shit, like this guy is my age, and like I'm here now feeling all this stuff and the highs and the lows and the love and the hate and all that shit, and like this guy is just gone, right? And it like really paints things in a different picture, and just goes to show like the importance of like I really feel, and like what I valued so much about when I was young was I was always present, you know. And there's a bit of like that youthful innocence, but take that out of the equation. There was this, not happiness, because happiness is fleeting and that's low level emotion. Joy, content, peace, calm, that is high levels. And that's what you're referring to with that statement, like that type of stuff that really calms you in this like profoundly positive way. And that's what makes you this like radiant person to like go out there and push yourself further and be a leader for other people, you know, the people around, even if it's just the people around you and the people who love you and the people who care about you, because there always are. And it's kind of surprising. You would be surprised who looks to you. Because I've found through this process, there's people who like came to me and were like, dude, like that was great. And I'm like, you were watching that? Like, shocking, right? In this really positive way. And it just goes to show like and that's what I really think that I'm really trying to build, that skill, is to be here now. Because when you're present, those emotions have like way less effect on you. Anxiety is future driven and guilt is about your past. Well, if you're present, just that goes out the window like automatically. Like it's just a product of being present, you know. So you think about like dealing with anxiety, and I'm not talking about like if you have like an actual diagnosable thing. I'm not a doctor, I'm not a psychologist, like okay,
that sounds like a lawyer,
you know. Yeah. I gotta cover my ass. I took medical law too, man. I know what I'm doing. So, you know, but you have to kind of identify like what it is that you're doing. And like I said, if I'm like, I mean, I have enough people around me, but like in my social circle, like if I'm alone forever, I'm good. Like that doesn't bother me. Like I'm really happy with like who I am. As I say happy, I'm very pleased with who I am, and I'm proud of the things that I am doing. And I am doing things that really bring me a great sense of challenge and satisfaction. And I love getting just my ass beat. I love it. Just bloodied hands and blisters and strains, and I love it. It sucks and I love it, right?
We can't wait to watch it.
Oh, and I will say what the difference too now is, we were talking about that earlier with like goals, and you know, I would say too, like, so the challenge originally, which is like really, I'm really scared that I'm actually going to make this statement right now, because I'm like, oh shit, now it's real. Because it's the first time I'm actually saying this like publicly. But the plan was 6,000 reps. I figured it was going to take about 21 hours to do that. from my understanding of the pull-up and chin-up record, you get the number, like whatever number the athlete is looking for, they get their number, and then they stop. I'm going to do it for 24 hours. I'm going to do it for 24 hours. I'm going to get my number as fast as I can. I think the number is going to be 6,000. I think we're good with that number. I figure it'll take 21 hours. And then I'm going to continue to do it for the full 24, because what I recognized when I stopped, I recognize that, man, you can, like, there's a treasure at the end of this thing. Like, in the darkness, there's a treasure chest waiting to be found. And I feel like I can really mess with my mind on like another level. Because when you think about it, the challenge starts when you finish the 6,000. That's when the challenge comes in, because you got to stay in the fight. You've already done you've already done the impossible. You've already done something that's never been done before. And now you're going to stay in the fight. And the reason that I want to do that, first of all, is because I lost. And my attitude is I lost the first time, so now I got to put the bar higher. Like, you should have done it the first time, because now the challenge is bigger. So sucks to be you, buddy. Get ready for a fight. So kind of I like that challenge, that added level of pressure and difficulty. And, you think you're tough, bring it on, and do that internally. But I remember in Goggins' book when he did the San Diego 100, and he was pissing blood and shit himself and all this stuff. Is so brutal. I mean, it's pretty funny too, because I'm like, damn, man, Goggins, you're a beast. But I think that's when he was trying to, and please fact check me, listeners, I'm going to do my best. But he was trying to qualify for the Badwater race, the hottest, I believe that's the hottest Death Valley race, right? Hottest race in the world. In order to qualify, he had to complete an ultra marathon of at least 100 miles, because he was talking to whoever guy was running. He runs the ultra marathons and determines who goes in. And he told David, look, you gotta, just because you're a Navy SEAL doesn't mean anything. You have to actually do an ultra. So Goggins did the ultra. I believe he ran 101 miles, because he couldn't remember if he did 100. So he did 101. And then he reached out to that guy. And the guy basically said to him, oh, you got, I got the 100 miles. And he was like, oh, it's a 24-hour race. You're supposed to run for 24 hours. That stuck with me, because I remember the first time I heard that, I was so angry, because I'm like, dude, you're an asshole. Like, Goggins is a beast. And you're telling this guy, yeah, come again? What? But the more, like I said, the repetition and the amount of times I heard it, and I was sort of elevating myself, and I understand where that guy is coming from now. And Goggins says that too. He was kind of oh, you're kind of a jerk, but he got it. Because Goggins a beast, so he gets it. But I think to do it, it's a 24-hour record. I'm a 25-year-old kid who shouldn't be where he is today, really, because what the hell, was crazy. And from my understanding, no one's done that before. They get their number and they stop. And I mean, usually it takes 20, 21, 22. But you have
24 hours to fulfill the actual competition, so might as well try to just see what happens.
I'll do 1 rep a minute for a few hours to get to this. I don't need to do the pace that I'm doing, but I want to see what that feels like. That's really, yeah, I'm in hook, line, and sinker. Whether that turns out to be a horrible decision or not, I'm willing to figure it out, because I am so it's so intoxicating. That idea of the fact that is my opportunity to put my stamp on things, and to think that someone's going to break my record. And I hope I'm getting ahead of myself. When I set the record, hopefully I set the record. I'm determined to set the record. I believe that I can, and I believe that I will. And, to think that when I think about the current record holder, he's forced me to elevate myself. That guy is as much a part of my journey as anyone else, indirectly. I've never met him, never spoken to him. I can't even remember his name. That's why I don't want to say his name, because I can't remember it. but he is he is making me better right alongside all the hard work I'm doing. And to think that perhaps I could do that for someone else is really interesting to me, because it's bigger than me. It's got nothing to do with me. It's beyond me. This is about like community and like pushing other people to become better versions of themselves and never having met them. And like, that is something special. And to think that people will live their whole life and never experience that is just unacceptable to me, because I have to do that for my own story. And I hope that doing something kind of crazy and unique by doing it for the full 24, hopefully that does something for someone somewhere at some time. And to me, that makes all the suffering worth it. And so I'm very determined to, make that happen. And,
That's really exciting. So we really want you to make sure that you give us the information about when you're actually doing that record.
When this episode comes out, all the information will be
on it.
Steady.
Perfect.
Yeah. So right now, I unfortunately, I'll let you finish, because I know where you're going with it.
So we really hope that you have that information to give us, and we hope that some of our listeners actually tune into that. And then if you have anything else that you want to,
let's hear about your podcast. Your podcast.
That's
is
what I was
called...
supposed to say.
Okay. Yeah, it's called the Mysteria Podcast. So I got about by the time this comes out, I'm recording a little bit. I'm obviously the record. One of the problems was I probably should have paid a little more attention to the record, but whatever. So I was a little bit distracted with podcasts. So the format of my podcast is I basically have conversations with people who are way smarter and way cooler than me. So what I really appreciate about the podcast is it's very reflective of me, which is I'm interested in everything. So I've had doctors, lawyers. I've had a friend from law school who's like, she's a beast. I've had a couple musicians on, had Paul Guerin from the Choir Boys, which is like one of my favorite bands. And it was unbelievable to hear him and telling stories about like how Bohemian Rhapsody was written and like crazy cool stories. Like I really geeked out. So I've had a number of like very extinguished. Yes, they've all perished. That's an edit.
Maybe
very distinguished people. And it's just a really great opportunity for me to talk to people and just kind of like pick their brain and it's interesting because when I started, obviously I was like terrified. So like my first few episodes are like, I have a hard time listening to myself anyway, because but especially back then, because I was just like this scared little kid trying to be a grown-up. I did a decent job, but it's cool because you can see like I get better and the conversations get better, and I got like my ring fingers are purple. I can't remember the name of the movement. It's for domestic violence, like awareness, and so you paint your ring fingers purple. If you just Google like purple fingernails domestic violence, really cheerful thing to search, you'll find it. So I had a professor of mine who's like a world leader in domestic violence law and research, and I took that as a course at university, and so we really get into some things. And I had a guy, he's in his 80s, and I believe he has AIDS. He has AIDS, and he got that as a result of a blood transfusion back in the 80s, and dealing with the stigma of that. The topics are like all over the map. But what kind of brings it together is my interest, because I'm interested in hearing people's story. Everybody has a story. Albeit some people's story are definitely more interesting than others, but there's something you can learn from everybody. And so I've been very fortunate to talk to very accomplished people and just like regular people with unbelievable stories. Authors, Catherine Fogarty, who's the creator of Love It or List It. She was on. She's super cool. She's an author as well. So yeah, it's a cool. It's a really enjoyable thing for me. It's been, yeah, it's just a great time. And they're long. Like 45 minutes to like 3.5 hours, which feels like we're at like 3.5 hours because I won't shut up today. But yeah,
I don't know what time we're at.
we are so far over an hour.
Oh, we're
I know
definitely
that
over
for
an
sure.
hour.
I can't stop talking. I'm sorry.
No, you're great. But we probably should end it here, I guess. Yeah.
Somebody's got to edit it.
Yeah, and it's you. Okay. So it's not me.
Wrap it up. All right, let's go. The hook's coming.
No, thank you so much for coming. This has been awesome. I actually feel like this podcast happened at the right time for me because I've learned a lot from you today.
And you've known me for a really long time too. So
yeah,
it's,
I've known
it's
you for a really
interesting.
long time. And a lot of these things you've kind of said to me in passing before, but it was really cool to have everything all at once.
In a podcast situation, she's actually forced to pay attention.
Yes.
And like listen.
That when she's
when
putting my ankle behind my head and all right, stretch it out.
Yeah, exactly. That's just her, like, making you feel like, like she's
Validated in
looking
some
for the
way.
tip, right?
Yeah.
Like,
No, but I'm fully able to have my attention on you this time versus doing a task at the same time
Yeah.
as listening to you. And you've had some new insights since the last time we've had some of these conversations. So it's really cool to see how you've, dissected your experience. And I appreciate that you came here to share that with us and with our listeners, because there's a lot to be learned, not just about, accomplishing a pretty insane goal, but even about small goals and tasks. And I think the lesson here is really getting to know yourself in order to accomplish something. Who am I? How am I going to be capable of this thing, and how am I going to get there? So thank you so much for being here. And we want our listeners to make sure that they check out your podcast as well and tune in when you actually do your second attempt at the record. We're very excited. And thank you so much.
Oh, and thank you. And if I could, one last plug, because I don't have the information right now, but my website, themysteriapodcast.com, I have a reading list on there on the website, and there's like 250 different things. It's from like my personal book collection and whatnot,
including the speed reading ones, so we can read all of them.
So it's all in there. So like and it's all by category as well. So like if you're kind of looking for like actual things to learn, and there's some good free ones on there too. Like the Marine Corps has like a really great series of publications that have been really helpful to me, and those are free. The link is on the website. So if you go to the website, go to the reading list, and then there's links to my social media. So we're like rebranding and stuff right now. So that's why I can't be of much service. But if you go to the website, and then it'll tell you like the specific date of the challenge and how to watch it, and
Cool.
all that fun stuff. And we're also, I want to raise $25,000 for BC Children's Mental Health Center as well. So
if people want to donate to that, would they do that through your website?
Yeah, it'll be on there. So I'm sorry I can't like be very helpful right now, but if you, by the time this episode comes out, it'll all be there for you. So
Awesome.
you just get it. So thank you so much. Thank you for letting me prattle on. I appreciate this.
No, thank you.
I think after this last like hour and something, we can all say very confidently that you're going to hit that record. No problem.
Yep.
24 hours
appreciate
of
it.
chin-ups.
I mean,
Fear.
like, if you chin up like you talk, this is in the bag.
That's right. Yeah, there you go. Okay.
Huh?
So I can talk the talk. You just got to walk the walk. I love it.
Or chin the chin.
Chin the chin.
Sounds
2
creepy.
trademarks in one episode. This is great.
Chin the chin.
That's going to be on, I'm going to write that on the chin up bar. I'm going to write chin the chin. There you
In
go.
French, when you cheer somebody, you say chin chin. So now I'm confused.
That's how we like to leave our podcast. So let's stop it here. Thank you so much for hanging out with us, for listening to us, for hanging out with Marcus, for hanging out with us. We are 3-Wave. We're here to help. If there's anything we can do, let us know. And yeah, you are strong. You are worthy. You are human. Thanks for coming.
Chin, chinny, chin, chin, chinny, chin, 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 chirring. Something about chin-ups and Marcus. Hippie.
Was that yippee or hippie?
It sounded like hippie.
Hippie,
I think
okay.
it was supposed to be.
It
I'm like,
definitely was supposed to
I
be
don't
hippie.
appreciate if you're calling me a hippie. Bro. This is fucking
Definitely
bullshit.
not giving me
Fucking
hippie vibes.
hell.
No. We'll say it was yippee. That sounds
Yippee.
better.
Yippee.
I had to ask. You mentioned Paul Stanley,
Yeah.
not Ace Frehley.
Yeah, I love Ace. I have one of his guitars.
Like his actual guitars?
No, one of his
Like the
models.
model of guitar. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, Paul Stanley to me, I have one of his guitars too.
Has that been bugging you this whole time?
Really has.